Welcome everyone to the 2025 ArchivesSpace Virtual Member Forum. I'm Jessica Crouch, the Community Engagement Lead for ArchivesSpace. I'm joined today by ArchivesSpace Lead Program Manager Christine DeBella and ArchivesSpace Program Assistant Bailey Grace Harrell. Also joining us during this session are members of the Virtual Member Forum Planning Team, our wonderful presenters, and you. We have an exciting and full lineup for this year's forum, so I'm going to very quickly take care of a few housekeeping items and then we'll dive in. You can find a link to the forum wiki, which has the agenda and other information in the chat. Jamie just shared that. We also have several members of the forum planning team on hand that can help if you have any questions about the forum, just like Jamie's here right now. Please feel free to drop any questions you have into the group chat. You can leave and come back during sessions as you wish. Your connection information will remain the same for this session. However, if you plan to attend the session later today or the session tomorrow, you will need to have registered for each of these events separately. If you haven't done that yet, you can find the registration links in that wiki. We are recording all sessions and recordings will be linked on the wiki page in the coming days. We're really excited to have such a large number of participants and attendees this year. But keep in mind, ArchivesSpace is a large community representing archives, libraries, museums, and other cultural heritage institutions in a variety of settings around the world, and individuals with a variety of skill sets. Please keep in mind everyone, including presenters, the planning team, the program team, and attendees are expected to adhere to the ArchivesSpace Code of Conduct during this event. If you'd like to alert us to an issue, please feel free to reach out to a member of the program team. So that means me, Christine, or Bailey Grace. So now for some thank yous. First, thank you to our forum planning team. ArchivesSpace is a community-supported program, and we require the input, effort, and expertise of members in all things, including in planning wonderful events like this. I'm very grateful to this year's forum planning team for soliciting presentations and developing this wonderful agenda. It speaks to the depth of expertise in our community that we have such a variety of presentations to learn from this week, but it takes a lot of time, effort, and patience to pull something like this together, and the planning team this year nailed it. I had a wonderful time working with each of you, so a special thank you to Joanne Archer, Ben Bradley, Austin Coburn, Katerina Dimitriou-Schuster. Special shout out to Katerina, who you will be hearing from in just a minute. Katerina is going to do all of our presentation introductions this morning. Emma Heck, Jackie Johnson, Christine Leveson, Jamie Margolotti, and Missy Narino. And thank you to all of the presenters we will hear from over the next 2 days. Each presenter will be introduced in their presentation, but I wanted to acknowledge them here as well. We couldn't have forums like this without engaged users willing to share their knowledge and expertise with the rest of the community. I've said this at every forum for the past several years, and every year it becomes more terrifyingly true, and every year I leave it in my script, but I know we all have a lot on our plates right now, and I'm deeply appreciative for each presenter dedicating the time and energy to participate in this forum. So a sincere thank you to everyone on this list. I look forward to hearing from you. And thank you all for being here. This will be a wonderful 2 days of presentations, learning, and discussion. Please feel free to chime in during the Q&A. The Q&A feature on your screen is where I will be reading the questions during the Q&A portions of sessions. So if you have a question for presenters, please do use that function, or you connect with one another in the chat, the forum planning team, or just, have conversations with each other in the chat. That's perfectly fine. The forum planning team will be posting helpful info there throughout the session, and you can chime in to the discussion. And of course, you can always just enjoy learning from others working in ArchivesSpace. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and turn things over to Katerina, who will introduce our first session for the day. Katerina?
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Jessica, for all the work that you have done. And thanks again to the whole community, to the people, the presenters, the team. It's been a very fulfilling experience for me, and dare I say, it was really fun. So without further ado, let's get started with our first presentation by Megan Brett from Thomas Jefferson Foundation, Monticello, and Courtney Rookard from Xavier University of Louisiana. Megan Brett is the Manager for Collections Processing and Digital Initiatives at the Jefferson Library of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation, which operates the historic site Monticello. The library's archival collection includes the scholarly and business records of the Foundation, documenting over a century of historical interpretation and conservation. Megan has a background in the digital humanities and open source software. Courtney Rookard serves as a processing archivist for the Archives and Special Collections at Xavier University of Louisiana, the only Catholic HBCU in the country. With over 10 years of experience in the archival field, she specializes in manuscript processing, data reconciliation, and uncovering metaphorical cans of worms. Courtney looks forward to soon launching ArchivesSpace for XULA's archives and special collections. Their presentation's title is Open Sesame, Data Cleanup with OpenRefine. OpenRefine is an essential tool for bulk data cleanup, both before and after migration. The open source program is simple to install, runs on a web browser, and has valuable functions straight out of the box. This presentation is a brief introduction to basic and intermediate cleanup functions. All yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. We are going to show you how you too can wield the magic of OpenRefine to clean up your data in preparation for importing into ArchivesSpace. I'm Courtney. I'm going to start off with some of the basics, and that means we're going to start from scratch. So once you've downloaded OpenRefine, you can navigate, you can download it from the internet. It's an open source program. It's a great program. We're going to show you all about it. So you can navigate to the file that shows the diamond icon. As a note, this command window opens. It is required to have OpenRefine run. So if this window accidentally gets closed in the process, you will need to exit out of OpenRefine and then restart it. So I'm going to hide that. And then this is OpenRefine. This is how it opens. And today we're going to start with a new project. So you can choose the file that you want. Here is our test one for today. And it will bring you to the screen for importing. You can import a variety of files. As you can see down here, there are lots of options. Today, we're going to focus on just importing an Excel file. The default options include having the first line as your column header. It will store any blank rows you have. If that's not something you want to do, you can uncheck this box right here. And it also stores your blank cells as nulls. All those defaults work well with the data that, with the functions that we're going to look at today. One thing I do want to note is you can change the project title, the name. I recommend putting the date that you import so that you have you can understand which file you're working with and which one's most up to date, especially if you're working with multiple projects or potentially importing and exporting the same project to mark your milestones. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So now we're going to create our project. First step's always the hardest. Now we have a project. As a note, it only shows the first 10 records. If you're like me and you want to see more of them, you just click the number that will show you all the records that you want to work with. A couple of recommendations we have for new projects is to trim the trailing, leading and trailing white space and also collapse the white space. All of the operations I'm going to show today are under these arrows at the top of each column. And so we're going to start with the all column. If we go to all, we want to edit all the columns and we want to trim leading and trailing white spaces. It will ask you which columns you want to include. I'm going to include all of them for this purpose. And you'll see at the top, this yellow box will show you the operations it's conducting as it does them. And then let's see. And when it finishes, the box disappears. So one great thing about OpenRefine is that it tracks the operations that you do with your data. So over here, you can see it has transformed all of the columns that I asked it to, all 29.
And you can see that I only had one column that needed some trimming, so that's good. The other great thing about this is that you can undo any operation that you conduct. And so, for example, if I didn't want to trim the last few columns, I can go click on the last operation I wanted it to complete, and then it will, all of these that are now grayed out have now been undone. And so you can go back if you do something by accident, and it's a really great way to do that. So go back over here. So so we did trim leading and trailing white space. You can also collapse consecutive white space. That's another thing that we recommend because white space can sometimes affect how your data renders. And we also recommend replacing smart quotes because those can sometimes affect your data as well. One note is that even if sometimes you may have strange characters and they may import and render in odd ways. So one thing we also recommend is sort of a spot check of your data once you import it to make sure that you catch any weird characters, because if they're weird in OpenRefine, they're potentially going to be weird or maybe even stranger when you import into ArchivesSpace. Okay, so now that we've got our data all set up, I'll start with the basic function. The one that I love the most, that I think is one of the most useful, is the text faceting, which essentially shows you the groups of data you have, and I believe shows you a good overview of your data and what's happening to it. So text faceting, you do this by individual column. I'm going to start with a collection number, facet, and text facet. I know that in this column, there are letters, so I'm going to stick with text facet, but as you can see, there are various other facets that you can also apply. So once you hit your facet, it appears over here in the left. As you can see, the choices for this column, most of them have one occurrence. I do have at least one that we can see that has a greater frequency. And so if I want to see all of the ones that have a frequency greater than 1, I can click over here in the count and see, oh, I have 9 collections with the same collection number. And then I can see, oh, I might need to do some work on this and figure out why this is like this, because it probably shouldn't be like this. But this is essentially how I'm using OpenRefine, is to look at data that I'm going to migrate into ArchivesSpace that's never been in there. This information is all from Word documents. And so I've had to do quite a bit of transformation to figure out what's happening and why numbers are duplicated. I've dealt with a lot of duplicate numbers. And so then you can unselect, and then your selection goes back to the full page. And the great thing about this is you can open various facets from various columns if you like, and you can compound them depending on what data sets, subsets you want to look at. So I'll get rid of these. One of the other useful operations I use is text filtering. It's essentially searching, and it's just under facet. So as you type in what you're looking for, it pops up with a selection that matches. And then you can focus in on smaller subsets of your data. So it's just another way to look at your data. And if you know what you're looking for versus seeing more of an overall picture, which the facets provide. Okay, now that we've looked at that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do with the columns. OpenRefine is great for moving around your columns and doing fancier things with them than you can do in Excel. So we can, if you go to a column, the arrow, and you go to edit column, this is where you can do all of the column operations. You can split something into several columns, and that's done using a separator, like a period, whatever your data already has. And then you can say how many columns you want to separate it into. If you don't know how many you have, you leave it blank, and then it'll separate it into how many ever columns makes sense. You can also join columns. Oh, there we go, join columns. And so you can choose which columns you want to join together and potentially how you want to join them. One thing I do recommend, this part over here that talks about nulls, I usually say to skip the nulls, because otherwise what happens is whatever you put here in the separator, if I put a semicolon and a space, it will append that separator to every cell, even if there's nothing else after it. And so if you don't want that to happen, then we say skip the nulls. So this one's going to join these three together, and it's going to put them in the selected column. I'm going to put them in location just as an example. And you can see it's now added the information from these two columns to this column. And so as a note down here, because this cell over here was blank, it only appended the separator where it needed it to. And so that's a great way to add your data together and transform it in that way. But I'm going to undo that because I don't want to keep it like that. So, and then there's an example of an undo. What else can we do with columns? Let's see. Go back to edit column. You can rename columns. I use this function to say which columns I'm going to use for ArchivesSpace. You can remove a column if you don't need the information or if it accidentally got imported and you didn't want it to. You can move columns from the beginning. You can move it to the end, and you can move a column one to the left or one to the right. Now, if you want to do more moving, I'm going to show you the other function that I didn't find before I knew about it. And unfortunately, I definitely I spent too much time moving my columns, 5 to the right and then, 5 to the left. So if you want to do more advanced moving, then we go back over here to the all column. We go to edit columns, reorder and remove. And this is where you can get really into it with, these are collection numbers, so I'm going to put them together, an accession number, and this is a file name, I don't need it, so I'm going to put it over here, and it's going to completely remove it. And so that's how you can get your data how you want it, and so you can visualize it better. The operations history does show that you reordered the columns. It doesn't tell you how, but it does show you that you did. So if you want to undo it, you can also undo that operation. Now, if you have a column that you don't want to see, but you don't want to delete it, you just don't want to see it at this time, that is under view, and then you can collapse it. You can see it's still there, but you can now see more of the data over to the right. If you want to see it again, you can just click it. And then under that view option as well, you can collapse columns, all the columns to the left. And then this is also how you expand your columns. And so that's a great way to see just the data that you want to see. One more operation I want to show is how you delete a row. If it's blank or you just don't actually want to deal with it anymore. So one way you can do that is to flag the columns that you want to delete, and then go back up here to the all facets. There are a couple facets you can do for the whole spreadsheet, but they're definitely not as powerful as the other ones that I showed. So if you facet by flag, remember to select the true so that only the flagged rows show. That's a point, just make a point of that. And then once you are seeing just the flagged rows that you want to delete, go back to the all column, go to edit rows, and then remove matching rows. And then those ones are gone. And as you can see, they also don't show up over here in the facet any longer. All right, those are the operations I wanted to show. I have one more thing I wanted to mention was exporting, because the purpose of this is to clean up your data and then be able to export it so that you can then import it into ArchivesSpace and have your accession records and your resource records and digital objects and whatever else you're dealing with import correctly. And so up here in the right-hand corner is export. I recommend Excel 2007 Plus. I've had the best luck with it. Some of the other ones don't work as well. And especially I would stay away from the comma separated values. As you can see, my data has lots of commas. That would not be helpful to me unless you know that your data is mainly numbers and doesn't have commas, then that could potentially be useful. And then one other export that is great if you're working with multiple people or you need to change machines, you can export the file as a project. And the great thing about that is that it then keeps your operation history so you can see what you've done. And so it's a great system. And so those are the basics that I'm going to cover today. And now I'm going to pass it to Megan to talk more about some intermediate operations that you can use.
Okay, so give me just a second. All right, so my use case with ArchivesSpace and OpenRefine is a little different from Courtney's. As she mentioned, she's cleaning up material information before going into ASpace. I'm cleaning up some material that's already in ASpace. We have some records that came in from legacy systems, and sometimes the metadata mapping didn't completely match, or there wasn't enough information. So we've ended up with a couple of blank columns. We've also got some material that I think was originally in like a Word document and all just got imported. So this is what an OpenRefine project looks like if you're using the bulk update spreadsheet in ArchivesSpace. Amazing functionality. Depending on what version of ASpace you're on, it's either a plugin or just built in. And the bulk update plus OpenRefine has made my life 1,000 times easier. So this is the initial import. And if you have worked with bulk update, you'll know that there's the title row, the first row, and then the second row is this really important row that makes the update work. Using that star functionality, I like to do this so that I don't break anything, because if that's not there and not the way it's supposed to be, your your update will throw an error. So I just facet by star after starring that row, and then I'm only dealing with my data rows. I have done so much with OpenRefine and the bulk update spreadsheet. I could talk for hours. I just want to show you some of the ways the programming language can help make some things easy. So one of the problems we had with a number of our older collections was that we had information date expression, but that hadn't been populated to begin and end. And OpenRefine makes it really easy to update this. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a column based on this column. I could just go straight into the date begin, but I like to add new columns so that I have a kind of a blank space to work on. That's my draft. And I'm just going to call this date new. And I'm going to use the general refine expression language to start doing some transformation of my data. So the first thing I'm going to do is transform the value of my column to date. And that just transforms it into a date format like you would have in Excel. And it gives you a little preview here. And you can see it's a full-on date format with time, which is not exactly ASpace compliant. So we're going to change it back into a text string. And I used to do this whole complicated, okay, I'll do that, and then I'll split it on the thing. And then I learned from the help desk files that you can actually tell it how you want to format that string. So here I've just transformed it into a ASpace compliant date. If you had a bunch of ASpace dates and you wanted to make them human readable for date expression, you could do that by saying, you know, that, or there we go, get the full month name. And this is all in the OpenRefine documentation, which is so helpful. So now I've got all of this. I've got the new dates that I want the way to go. And the other thing I'm going to do is if we look at row 3 here, you'll notice that it's unable to convert because it's not a normal date. It's got that and. And up here, I've got on error set to blank. I can also store the error or copy value. I'm going to leave set to blank. That's really important, as you'll see in just a second. So now we've got my new column. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to facet, customized, and then facet, oh, hold on, the Zoom menu is in the way. Facet, customize facet. I use this the most and it's at the very bottom. So now I can see, okay, 120 of my rows have something, but there are 16 that are blank. And so depending on how many there are, I can look at this, I can use the text facet to get an idea of what I'm looking at, and I can make the decision of whether I'm going to continue to do transformations or I'm just going to manually enter some of these. And I get an idea of, okay, I've got a bunch of circas, so maybe I want to deal with those in some way. And then that's the next step. The other tool I found really useful for dates, especially for some of the material that seemed to have come from just a simple text document, is to use regular expressions. If you're not familiar with regular expressions, they're a way of giving a tool, the computer, some kind of pattern to match. So not an exact match, like it would be if I typed letter, but rather an idea of what characters to match. And if you're not familiar with regular expressions, there's lots of documentation out there, but you can use it to find sort of things. So this means find any digit and find any string of 4 digits. Now, this alone would find anything 4 digits or more. So it folds zip codes. So it's useful but it's useful as, again, a kind of initial way to say, what if I got, okay, I've got a bunch of dates and months and they're all after a comma, and I can start thinking about how to start processing from there. And what I would probably do is I would grab just what's after the comma using the split function, and then transform that using the toDate function. OpenRefine is super, super useful. It is not perfect. And I'm just going to demonstrate that by, if I facet by text, and then I show you just 1939, we've got this one. This didn't show up on my toBlank because the date did parse it, but it parsed it to January 1st. So not every transformation is perfect, but what I find is that OpenRefine makes it much easier to identify those errors, those little hiccups. And again, that's why I use a new column. And because we've got this faceting and filtering, it's so much easier to spot those in OpenRefine than it would be in Excel. And then again, as Courtney said, I just export to XLS. I would open that Excel file, change the first sheet to updates, copy over the enums file, and run the update. And I have learned all of this through so much trial and error, a lot of error and a lot of trial. And there are amazing resources out there online. OpenRefine has great help decks. There are online lessons about how to use OpenRefine from Library Carpentry and the Programming Historian, which I found super, super useful. And I'm happy to answer your questions. So we left a little time to hopefully get some questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney and Megan. I really appreciate you doing that. It's always interesting to see what can happen with OpenRefine, and I hope that is just the start of maybe a few series of presentations that you could do, because that was really exciting. We're running a little bit behind schedule, but we know, and that's okay. So we're going to take a few minutes for questions. So if anyone does have a question, please feel free to drop that into the Q&A now. All right, we have a question. Do you know of any sites that let you test out GREL functions in the same way regxr lets you test, regdex? I don't know any of this. I'm finding it harder to get my head around GREL than it was to learn regex, and the testing is slow within OpenRefine itself.
I can answer that.
Good.
Yeah. So I don't know of a site that lets you test, but the nice thing is that transform window always has a preview. And so I will frequently use that to see what I'm doing. And again, that's also why I use the new column and the undo, because it lets you see what the results are and then figure out why it's not working.
Thanks. Anna asks, just thanks so much, excited to use this. I'm wondering, how do you update the records in ArchivesSpace after? Do you use the bulk updater functionality or through the API?
Oh, I use the bulk update. I exported it as an Excel, and then I used the bulk update function previously plugin. So I have not yet figured out APIs.
Thank you. Sarah asked, would ArchivesSpace or has ArchivesSpace considered running a workshop where people could bring data and practice in OpenRefine with people that are using it? I think that's a great idea. I'm really excited that Megan and Courtney did this today, and I hope that maybe it could start a larger conversation about using tools like OpenRefine. So if anyone is interested in helping develop that with me, I do not use OpenRefine and am not an OpenRefine expert, obviously. But if anyone else feels like they are, and I already really appreciate Megan and Courtney letting me twist their arms a little about this, but if anyone is interested in that, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. All right, we've got 1 more minute for questions, but I'm not seeing any pop up in the Q&A.